Ladies and gentlemen and friends, we are at game industry endgame right now, where Sony and Xbox thrives to become a conglomerate of publishing studios. Xbox has always been doing this, we know about that, nothing's new. Microsoft is notorious for throwing money at everything until they win. But we saw this sudden flip for Sony, at least the public did this year, where a few months ago we were told not to worry and that Sony isn't just obsessed with blockbusters. Well, that very point was counteracted today when Jason Schreier was commenting on a story that Bloomberg put out, saying that he knows that the PlayStation's indie support team is severely understaffed and their main focus is blockbusters, making it incredibly frustrating for these indie game devs to follow up with Sony on contracts, taking weeks or months for them to reply if they even get the response to the contract at all. Man, that's just sad. We'll go more into depth about that story later on in this video. It's been a few weeks since I uploaded, so you know the drill. We're gonna go through a bunch of news today that happened that I want to talk about. Yeah, I've just been working hella overtime these past few weeks, and well, Guilty Gear Strive just came out, so you know, I'm busy. So Sony Interactive, why is this quote-unquote obsession with blockbusters so relevant today? Well, as mentioned before, alongside of pissing off a bunch of indie game dev, which we'll talk about later, they're starting to take one out of the books from Microsoft and buying these producers. Housemarque, the studio behind Returnal, which was their first AAA game, thanks to Sony, since the over 25 years of the company making games. So hey, congrats to them. There's also a rumor that Sony bought Bluepoint, and this is because Sony's Japan Twitter accidentally put that they bought Bluepoint instead of Housemarque, so big mistake. It seems a little too specific to be a mistake, especially with Bluepoint recently remaking Demon's Souls. We're all fully expecting that to be real and wouldn't be a big surprise at all. Sony also announcing that they bought Nixxes this week. Nixxes being a company that works closely with Square Enix to port some of their games, and has also worked firsthand with Square on things like the Avengers. Maybe this is why all these rumors are surfacing a few months ago about Sony buying Square. So yeah, Nixxes joins the PlayStation quote-unquote family, and who knows what they will be working on, maybe more PC ports. So yes, this will mainly be the news from Sony Interactive acquiring studios. We learned earlier this year that Japan studios and internal Sony Interactive devs were basically wiped out. Reorganized. So Sony actually doesn't have their own game devs anymore. They just bought a bunch of other ones and reorganized the ones that were in Japan Studio and Sony Interactive. Well, the ones that stayed. So why is this a big deal or endgame, as I said in my fear-mongering way? Well, it's a double-edged sword. Although these big publishers can do amazing things for these producers, like Housemarque creating its first AAA game, and Bethesda now going full force with Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6, thanks to the increased dev power from the Microsoft acquisition, we hear things like stories from Bend Studio, makers of Days Gone, who stated about the fear of being absorbed by Naughty Dog and Sony Interactive, because when the acquisition happens, they start moving around their resources internally. Another perfect example of this is when we heard about all the producers under Blizzard Activision supporting the new Call of Duty game to some degree, maybe not putting all their resources into it, but at least Activision taking some of it. And that's what gets people scared, you know, all it takes is one bad move. I mean, look what Microsoft did to Rare. They at least bounced back though. But yeah, that's some huge purchases from Sony. We'll see if they really own Bluepoint. Nothing's confirmed yet. Even Bluepoint saying that they're completely independent, but you know, obviously if they signed an NDA, they can't say anything. Sony was looking into buying Housemarque a while ago, but the development of Returnal delayed it. So it wasn't that they waited for Returnal to be successful, then they bought it. No, they were already going to do it because of how closely Sony Interactive and them work together. People started saying that all the acquisitions and the shift in focus of Sony Interactive has got to be a clap back to Microsoft, right? I mean, maybe they do want to dominate the console space. However, Xbox is going in a completely different direction. Phil Spencer says how Xbox sees Apple and Amazon being their primary rivals, since cloud gaming is the main space that Xbox wants to be in, with Xbox Game Pass and xCloud being integrated into Windows 11, and now a recent report from Jeff Grubb's GameBeat that Hideo Kojima and Xbox signed a letter of intent for Kojima to use his brilliance to try to take advantage of Xbox's technology, what I assume would mainly be cloud computing, and how he would turn that into a game, like a real-life Death Stranding maybe, I don't know. I love how Kojima always comes into these stories. Dude's not even a game dev anymore. We'll see if this means, Xbox is gonna buy Kojima Productions. I feel like with all these acquisitions that have been happening, it's starting to be like Smash Bros level of speculation. But Kojima also close with Sony, with Death Stranding getting its big PS5 update soon, so you know, they're still close. Kojima's just in the middle getting thrown money from both sides. You know, he stays winning. But how do you feel about all these acquisitions? More first-party games, is that good? Is that what you want? It definitely leads to console exclusives, which can be annoying, and less of a creative directions with the studios. We now know that any company that's being taken in by Sony is maybe working on a Last of Us remake. I'm just kidding. That was an extreme example. Hopefully nothing like that happens again. And Xbox touting how they would like to leave their devs alone. But I can already say that that's not true, because you know for a fact they're gonna make every dev need to figure out how to make their game work perfectly on xCloud. Or maybe we'll find out that every dev just got thrown at Todd Howard to make Elder Scrolls 6. projects. Anyways, I digress. But that leads us to our next story, which is about how Sony kind of sucks when it comes to supporting these indie devs. Sony has been working pretty closely with the indie devs. At any state of play, you see a lot of indie showcase, but they've been exposed recently. Ian Gardner, an indie game dev of Neon Doctrine, wrote in a Twitter thread his frustrations with said Platform X, which was very clear to be Sony after a waterfall of similar stories came out from other indie devs voicing their annoyances with said Platform X. Ian writes how said platform gives no ability to manage their games, and it appears to be like an extreme case of favoritism in which Sony will promote on their store. He writes, before you launch, you need to develop the game for Platform X or Sony, get through their incredibly difficult lot check spread over 3 generations of back-end software, submit a Sony specific trailer, write a blog post, and submit multiple forms of Sony media. Damn, Sony, you're gonna make them make ads and blog posts before they even get their game approved? Sony gatekeeps everything about these games, even in terms of launch sales. But for the low price of 25,000 American dollars, you can then be prominently featured on the store. One of the worst things I read about this story is that it takes so freaking long, or you're just ghosted by Sony after doing all these things that said need to be done to even get a chance to get your thing on the store. And it seems like there's outright favoritism. And not having controls of the sale of the game is a big deal. Many indie devs coming forward and saying how they're only able to put their game at a discount or choose when to put their game on sale for every platform other than Sony. And as Jason Schreier pointed out as a follow-up to this is mainly because they're understaffed apparently. It's not even the extreme favoritism. This just hasn't been looked at in a while, hasn't been updated. The workflow has not been updated in a very long time, it seems like, or the approval process is ancient. So it looks like Bloomberg was right on the money a few months ago that Sony is prioritizing their big blockbuster games, or obsessed, if you will. Never forget what had to be lost to get to this moment. Damn. Let's hope they don't just buy these studios, make them work on a AAA game, and then have them work on the freaking Naughty Dog remakes that they're doing. I don't know, man. Seems like unnecessary gatekeeping for people to get their games on the platform. But I guess it ain't even gatekeeping when there's not a gate to begin with, because, well, that whole thing is understaffed, so there's not even people managing that. Do better, Sony. And on to the next big conglomerate producer, we get to EA. And another report from Grub of GameBeat. EA motive the team behind Star Wars Battlefront 2 and Star Wars Squadrons, which is reportedly working on a reboot of Dead Space. And more to the report has come out since then, with things actually pointing to a remake of Dead Space. Dead Space, now being a 13-year-old game, could definitely use a fancy coat of paint. It would be the scariest ray tracing you've ever seen. No, but this is safe, and it will, I guess, test the waters if EA is going to go forward with making more Dead Space games. Because, you know, they wouldn't put the manpower and resources behind a brand new Dead Space game unless they knew that, you know, the IP was still selling like hotcakes. The remake apparently takes heavy inspiration from things like Capcom's Resident Evil 2 remake, so it seems like this will be a full from the ground up remake. If the leaks are right, which this story has been developing for like the past month, we can expect to see this at EA show July 22nd, or even earlier than that. EA Play is a showcase of EA's games, which is gonna be happening all month, it seems like. EA Play is a showcase where they'll show off their own umbrella of developers. It's the theme of this episode, I guess. Starting July 8th, with their first show being a first-person shooter showcase. There's probably gonna be a big Apex Legend update and more details about Battlefield 2042. We'll wait to see the details about this 128-person online shooter game. July 13th will be about indie games, including Joseph Fares, designer of It Takes Two, Olav Redman, designer of Lost in Random, and Valan, designer of Knockout City. Maybe a new big-ass Knockout City update. July 19th will be all about Madden NFL 2020. Couldn't be an EA show without EA Sports, baby. July 20 will be even more EA Sports, where we won't know what's being showcased. It's gonna be a big surprise. I'm hoping for like FIFA or NFL Street, man. I don't know. I haven't played a traditional sports game in forever. Those Street games were fun as hell, though. And July 22nd will be the EA Play Live, where we're expecting to see a Dead Space reboot, remake, I guess. All that's confirmed is that BioWare won't be present, at least showcasing Dragon Age 4 or what's next in store for the Mass Effect franchise. And it looks like they're going to be going through everything that happened earlier in the month with that show. We'll see the 40-minute presentation. It doesn't say expect something new other than just July 20th with the EA Sports thing. Everything else seems to be they know what they're going to talk about. But Jametsu and Jeff Grubb says it's going to happen, so it must happen, right? At least if not showcased now, but maybe later. But hell yeah, bring us the Dead Space remake. I'm down for that. And maybe if it sells well, we'll see more Dead Space in the future. Speaking more about industry collaborations and rumors, after over 10 years of speculations, we are most likely going to see a new Silent Hill game. And people are not happy. With Konami involved, that is no surprise to me. Konami has partnered up with the developer Blue Bloober, who is the team behind Layers of Fear, Blair Witch, and Medium. With all the themes of these games being about psychological horror, revolving around the state of the mind, it's no far stretch to think that, hey, they're probably working on a Silent Hill game. So why are people upset? Well, people are critical of Bloober, that name is so funny to say, that they're very shallow when it comes to their horror or their themes. Silent Hill is a more subtle horror, with its aim being to unnerve you versus cheap jump scares. We'll wait and see if this really is a Silent Hill game. Maybe they'll get a good writer behind it. I mean, this isn't gonna be another Metal Gear Survive situation now, is it? Oh boy. Well, in other Konami news, it seems we are going to get a Castlevania Advance collection, with ratings showing up for Castlevania Advance first in Australia and then in Korea. This one is all but officially confirmed at this point. Game Boy Advance Castlevania's Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, and Aria of Sorrow, which I gotta try out because I'm a massive fan of Fusion, so I probably would have really liked these games. Porting a collection of handheld games is not as tired in my opinion, since these old handhelds aren't as maintained. And what, is Nintendo gonna put Game Boy games on their eShop? So this one is all but confirmed, Castlevania Advance Collection. And I'll just wrap up this episode with all this week's news with the Final Fantasy Remake Collection. This is something I was excited about. It was shown off by Square Enix at E3. Final Fantasy 1 through 6 is all getting pixel remakes. And although I know people would prefer that games like Final Fantasy 6 especially got the Octopath Traveler vibe, these seem to be impressive full-on ground-up pixel remakes, keeping the same pixel density for SNES, meaning that they had to especially redo all the sprites for the NES games being 1 through 3. This is a very welcome collection because before, the only things available on Steam were the crappy iOS versions, which I think have been taken down since then. So Final Fantasy 1 through 3 come out July 28th, and 4 through 6, which is probably the ones that people really care about, is still to be determined. These remake collections are way more expensive than I thought. All 6 games is $100 Canadian, which goddamn. But if you want to see the origin of chaos, then maybe check this one out. Unfortunately, this collection will not be coming to console, just on Steam and mobile. And some quick updates. Doom Eternal will get a single player horde mode, and it also had a big 120 FPS patch for PS5 recently. And Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut has been announced for both PS5 and PS4. It'll be 60 FPS, 4K, taking advantage of the PS5's faster loading time and 3D audio. This will be available August 20th. The game includes all the DLC for the original game, which you would expect, and an additional expansion with a new island to explore and story content. And because Sucker Punch is actually cool devs, if you pre-ordered the Director's Cut, you get access to the full original game so that you can transfer your file to the Director's Cut. If you just own the original game for PS4, you can upgrade for $20 to the PS4 Director's Cut, $10 for the PS4 to PS5 Director's Cut, which honestly I thought that would just be free, or go from base PS4 game directly to PS5 Director's Cut for $30. I have to say, I just got a PS5 last week finally, and figuring out what is and isn't allowed to upgrade was the most confusing thing ever for me. Like getting the Spider-Man remake, you can only get it if you own Miles Morales, but not the original, or even the original Neo remake. Whatever, it's really confusing. You just can't get the remake if you own the original game. And to wrap up this video about industry news, the last thing we're going to talk about is GDC, or the Games Developer Con. We already know that Newgrounds will be there. Well, let's go. They're getting love and attention that they need and deserve. And the Coalition, the team behind the Gears of War series, will be showing off a Unreal Engine 5 tech demo on the Series X. We already seen Unreal Engine 5 running on the PlayStation 5, so let's see how this looks out. GDC 2021 will be July 20th. I'm sure that there will be lots of news coming from that showcase. All right, well, I'm going to end this video here. There's obviously more things that we could talk about, but I'll talk about it in another day. Kazuya's out for Smash, so go hit A bunch. You can win probably. Oh, and Mies.